everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Well, hey there, Rob. It's me, Diana Perry Cruz.
It's me, Jackie. I've actually decided I like going last. It gives me a longer time to sing my name.
Your song?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'll switch back come 2026.
I don't know.
If we make it there.
Y'all made that up. That's not like a thing that we are required by podcast law to do. It is just a bit. But
Do you know what my bit is? That I keep losing my hair tie.
Is that a bit, or that's just something that happens
It's
to you?
happening to me.
Okay, that's not a bit. A bit is more of a...
You're a bit.
Okay, there you go. That's a bit. But this isn't a bit podcast, although we might do bits occasionally. It's a podcast.
Everyone's like, get to it.
Behavior analysis. You know what, folks? You're going to get your CEs and you're going to get your cool information, whether we do bits or not. Hold your horses. We should do a poll. Actually, I don't want to do a poll. Do you like our bits? Because then if everyone's like, no.
No, it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't. You know, yeah, that's right.
People don't get the choice on the bits.
No, we do bits because... You know what? Y'all record 300 plus episodes.
We are
you tell me
keeping
you're not going to
ourselves
start doing
entertained.
bits. Everyone
what's
will start
going
doing
on
bits.
here.
That's how podcasts work. What do we do? We're a podcast about behavior
I'm going to tell you what
analysis.
episodes we're talking about.
What episodes?
What?
You
no,
mean
I'm going to tell you articles.
I haven't even introduced the topic yet.
Fine,
We're losing the thread here, which is funny because Diana is actually crocheting and podcasting today.
I am. That's right.
Because Jackie was promised a toy or something, so it's got to get made now. But we're not bits. We're not really a crochet podcast. We're not a podcast about mysteries of hair ties. We're a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, where every week we pick a topic and discuss relevant research articles related to that topic. Sometimes we do so in a good mood, sometimes apparently a terrible mood. Who knew?
I'm not in a bad mood.
I'm not in a bad mood either.
No, okay. I'm not either. So I don't know. We came in kind of hot though, because I think the subject today is one that gets us really hot and bothered. And that topic is when you forget to do your paperwork.
I love that. That's from Monsters Inc.
Yeah, we're all going to do it. We're all going to do our best one. Okay. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
WAZOWSKI, you forgot to do your paperwork.
Diana, you sound like Natasha Lyonne when you do your
Oh my God,
Roz
what
impression.
an amazing compliment.
Yeah.
I love her.
You're like the original poker face over here.
Okay, Jackie, you're up.
Not my strong suit.
It's okay.
WAZOWSKI, you forgot to do your paperwork.
Oh, yours is pretty good. That was pretty good.
Great. Good job.
You have to say that because I'm not good at it.
Oh, no.
It was really good. But people, you can write in and let us know who did it best.
Who's
Who
your
wore
favorite?
it best?
Jackie did. All right. What articles are we talking
That's right.
about?
We're talking about paperwork. So we're doing kind of a little mishmash of articles on the subject of how to get people to put in their paperwork more consistently. That's why we started off so hot. We didn't file our podcasting paperwork. We're just winging this one. Whoopsies.
Oh, my God.
Sorry.
Luckily, there are no rules in podcasting.
Well, I mean, there was a podcast division of the federal government, but I don't know what happened to it. I haven't heard from them in a while.
All right, you want to hear what we're talking about today?
Sure.
Okay, in no
is it trenchant
particular
political
order.
humor?
No particular
No,
order.
it's not. We have 3 articles that talk about all the varying aspects of paperwork in our field and how you can make the process better / more streamlined / more accurate. And those articles include comparison of enhanced and standard data sheets on treatment fidelity and data collection for TACT training by Halber, Reedy, Kodak, Cowan, and Harmon. And
We
published-
like Reedy recently. It's like the last.
I think it's just from the preview.
Oh, yeah, duh.
Yeah. Yeah, we just did that. This was published in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2024, but I'm sure we do like Reedy as well. That was Jessica Reedy.
Way to bring it back.
Yep.
Sorry.
Also, using a checklist to increase objective session note writing, preliminary results by Luna and Rapp, and published in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2019. And finally, the use of a pictorially enhanced self-instruction packet to improve weekly timesheet completion in an ABA clinic by Brown, and published in Journal of Organizational Behavior Management 2022.
Beautiful.
Good stuff.
Well, we all know if anyone's worked in an organization, which we all have, is depending on your organization, you are filling out tons and tons of paperwork. Some of it probably feels sort of boring and frustrating, and I didn't go to grad school to do this stuff, but it's important logistically for your company to be able to make sure that the right people are being billed, that no one is being taken advantage of, that you are doing your due diligence in terms of services. And all of us do other paperwork that we would probably consider more useful day to day, our session notes, our, documentation of our hours sometimes, whether that's related to making sure that we are compensated for the work that we are contractually doing, or whether it's just to ensure that we are providing the correct level of care. There's just tons and tons of paperwork that needs to be done. And one thing that is true about paperwork is that it is not anybody's favorite part of the job. You didn't get into behavior analysis because you were like, oh man, I hope there's some sort of insurance law so I can fill out billing forms.
You never know. Somebody.
I got to be honest, folks, write in if you're the person who's like, I got into behavior analysis to fill out forms, because if so, there's a lot of jobs you probably could have also had that allow you to just fill out forms all day.
Like a form filling job.
You could be a form filler. Yeah, you could work in the insurance company itself and fill out those forms all the time. They got tons of forms. But all of us need to do forms, and I'm sure all of us would like to do our forms perfectly, but it is just one more thing in a sea of one more things, and often paperwork just doesn't get done. Or we do the paperwork and we do it wrong because maybe we don't do that paperwork all the time, or maybe we're rushed. There's a lot of reasons. So we're going to talk about what those could be.
And very often we're needing to do paperwork as a team too, right? So it's not just us doing our own paperwork, but you are relying on other people in your team to complete that paperwork with accuracy and timeliness in order for everything to keep moving in the way that we need it to.
I have a team, my team this year at my day job, one of our goals was not just paperwork, but we needed better paperwork systems, because when we realized we wanted to track certain data, we realized we did not have enough paperwork to easily do that. And it required a lot of digging through, random Google Drive folders and organizational systems. And so part of what we said is we need to spend a lot of this year figuring out what is the most important paperwork that we all agree we will now fill out all the time. So I was very excited for this topic because
you got to stay on top of that.
It is very hard to get everyone to agree on what paperwork that is, and then also to get everyone to do it. Because we're mandating it for ourselves.
You're not woman dating it? Just kidding.
We can person date it.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to say that at my day job, we use the OneDrive to organize our folders. And recently, like in the last year, they made it so that you can color code the folders on the OneDrive, which, oh boy, let me tell you, that is some exciting stuff.
Did paperwork
right there.
I haven't yet.
Go
I
up
haven't
100%?
used it yet, but
except for Jaggy?
I have seen people do it.
Yeah.
And like, what is this green hot mess in my beautiful yellow folders?
I got a system, man. Love it. Love me some color coding, as Jackie already knows.
I will organize. I like organizing desktop folders. I have all my research. I like to organize it. And when I don't have time, I have a folder just called unsorted research. And then if I finish all my work, when we start getting close to vacations, I'll take an hour and I'll just like, what folder does this go in? And I make up naming systems for all my digital files. It's a lot of fun.
I just delete everything. I'm like, I'll never need that again.
God,
delete.
Jackie. Yikes. Hopefully it's nothing that you needed to keep for 7 years, according to the BACB.
I have that all on paper.
Ooh.
All right, Diana, go ahead. You're going to go first, talking about some articles.
All right.
Forgot that we were talking about articles,
I know.
everyone.
We have already. It's not just
we
anecdotes.
almost forgot to do our paperwork.
Not just anecdotes about paperwork.
Okay, so I am starting us off short and sweet and cute with the Luna and Wrap article, which is the one talking about using a checklist to increase objective session note writing. And this is like a 5-pager article. And they did the whole study in seriously 1 hour. I mean, the part where they're collecting
the best idea ever.
No, right? And it's from 2019, which is not that long ago, but it is a few years back. And it is addressing a problem that, guess what, we all have probably seen happen, which is we need to have a note for a session, but we also need that note to contain the right information, right? And this is one of the situations where it's very often you're asking somebody else to write this note because you are asking the RBT or the behavior tech who's there with the client to write the note. We need the notes for conversations with parents, right? We need the notes for billing and insurance reasons, and also because the BCBA should be looking at that as part of the overall record for that client to make sure that we're providing the proper services in the right way. So for all these reasons, we need to be using this. This study, they conducted it as this was the time period where they were establishing the RBT task list. And so this was them taking a look at ensuring that we have the proper training tools in place for teaching skills that should be on the RBT task list. So that was kind of cool. And it was conducted in a school district. In the district, they were providing RBT training for their behavior technicians. And so some of those folks were in a training to ensure that they were receiving or learning how to write session notes. So there were 15 RBTs who were in there, and then 2 special education teachers as well. The RBTs were the main focus of the study. 2 of them were brand new. The rest of them, the other 13, had at least a year of experience, and everyone had at least an associate's degree. So they were coming in with some varying backgrounds, and it was all set up like a pre-post test, which again, you don't find that many of those here, but they were able, I think, to pull it off and get the information that they needed. And so it was seriously like a 1 hour or 1.5 hour training where they had some role plays conducted. So the participants were watching people run a pretend session, and then they were supposed to write the note about the session afterwards. And the sessions were like 2 minutes long. They trained 2 graduate student research assistants to be the role players. So one of them was a child and one of them was a teacher. And they role played running like a 2-minute session where they did one trial of a preference assessment and then an auditory visual discrimination task, which basically was like identify the thing. And they had 3 things laid out. They ran 10 trials of that. And then for 5 of the 10 sessions, the child role player also engaged in some type of challenging behavior so that could be included in the session note. So they watched these initial role plays and then needed to write a session note about them. And then they did that 3 times. And then they were provided with a session note checklist, which was basically the independent variable there. And then after that, they did the role plays again. So it was a pre-test, post-test model, but they had several data points for each participant within the beginning sessions and then the after sessions. And the checklist was designed so that the study participants could write their session notes. It was very thorough, right? They designed it based on input from varying special education teachers and others with similar backgrounds. Here were the steps of the checklist. There were 9 components. Number 1, indicate the task that was completed during the session. Number 2, indicate the reward that was earned or was being earned during the session. Number 3, indicate the level of prompting needed for the child to complete the task. Number 4, avoid using subjective terms. Number 5, pair positive statements with outlining the behavior. Number 6, indicate the next steps that were needed. So will you keep teaching the same skill or a new skill? Number 7, indicate if there are other concerns, such as the child seemed tired or did not eat. Number 8, indicate if severe behavior occurred and touch base with the teacher or supervisor if that happened. Number 9, ensure that the note is sent home as soon as possible. So that was the checklist that they received. Mm-hmm. No feedback, just the checklist. All right. Yeah. And then afterwards, again, they watched 3 more role plays and the role plays were 2 minutes and they had 2 minutes to write the note, which is not very long. I will just note that for you. So then there were the 3 post checklist role plays that they received. Now, I said the whole study took an hour. What I mean is the data collection, the part where they got the data, took an hour. But then after that, they had to code each of these session notes.
Which takes forever.
Yes, that part did not take an hour. I can guarantee you that. So then they trained some more graduate students to score the notes. And each note had 4 areas that were being tested for. And the person could receive either a 0 or a 1 as it did or did not occur. A 1, you got the point. Means it did occur. And so they were testing for these 4 things. First, reinforcer. Did they talk about the reinforcer used in the session? If so, you got a point. Next, subjectivity. The session note should not contain opinions of the participant. For example, saying things like, they seem to be in a bad mood. They were not a happy camper. She needs more patience. Those would all have scored a 0. They didn't do that. They got a 1. Next, prompting. Did they note the prompting level that was needed? So saying that they needed a gesture or needed guidance was okay. You would get a point for that. You'd score a 1. If they just said something vague like they needed prompting, that was a no. And then, did I tell you that there were 4 areas? There were 5 areas. Sorry. The 4th area was challenging behavior. So if they noted topographies of behavior that occurred, like they said hand biting occurred, that was okay. They would get a 1 for that. But if they just said generically they engaged in behaviors, which is my least favorite, that was not okay. You would score 0. And then final area was the task. So if they indicated the acquisition targets that were in the teaching session, you got credit for that. So you had to say something relatively specific, like they worked on identifying colors. That would be okay. But if they just said they did flashcards or worked on listener responding without basically identifying the stimuli that were involved, that would be not okay. You would get a 0. So everything was scored. You might wonder what the IOA looked like. It was actually really good. They scored 100% of the sessions for IOA and averaged 95%.
It's really good.
Yeah, so it was good, given that this was a pretty complex coding system and there was probably a little bit of subjectivity there. They had really good
Not according
IOA.
to the checklist. I'm just kidding.
I know, right? And so then after that, they looked at the results and they measured it as, for each of these 5 areas, did they see no change pre to post test? Did they see an improved score? Did they have a ceiling effect, meaning they did it perfectly in baseline and then also in the post test? Or did they worsen after receiving the checklist? Overall, everyone improved with the checklist, but it was not just across the board improvement. So there were some areas where there was no change. The prompting didn't always see a change, and the task didn't always see a change. So they wondered if maybe their checklist for the session notes weren't specific enough and what to really do there. And then probably most interestingly, in the problem or the challenging behavior category, they actually saw a worsening in the session note writing after the checklist.
Yeah.
And
That
this
was
one they
strange.
were, I know, right? It was a little bit weird. They think maybe there was nothing super specific in the checklist about noting if challenging behavior occurred. And so they think they said maybe the checklist had very tight stimulus control, meaning people were omitting things that they would have listed before because it wasn't in the checklist. That was kind of their best guess as to why that happened. But given that there was no feedback here, all they had to go on was the checklist, and perhaps just giving a tiny little morsel of feedback being like, hey, don't forget to note if challenging behavior occurred, they would have totally seen this change and not have this worsening effect. So given that was the only independent variable introduced here was the checklist itself, this was pretty promising results. And then, of course, in real life, you probably would also be able to give a little bit of feedback as well.
Yeah.
But just giving the checklist itself saw an improvement in most things. So right there, number 1 tidbit, everybody, is you could provide a checklist for something like a session note. You could even laminate that sucker, stick it right in the book, right? So everyone has it to refer to later on. And that in and of itself could be a pretty meaningful change in the detail that's provided in your session notes.
And easy.
And easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So always start with easy if you can, especially because it might be all you need.
Yeah. So that is tip number 1.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, we've got a lot more to talk about relating to doing your paperwork, but let's take a little break. And when we come back, we will continue that discussion. We'll be right back.
Hi. Do you want to be a BCBA, also known as a board certified behavior analyst?
Sure. We all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Massachusetts to get your graduate degree, just minutes outside of Boston.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education, dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years.
And our 2022 graduates had a 92% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy approved fieldwork placements, ethics mini handbooks, PhD levels professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland if interested.
And don't forget, our program is accredited by the Association of Behavior Analysis International, or ABAI, as a Tier 1 master's degree program.
Don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu.
regiscollege.edu.
One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Bye.
And we are back talking about hot research-related tips on doing your paperwork.
Hot tips.
But before we continue on with those tips, I want to remind all of our listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE and Quava approved. And by listening, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening to the show, of course, then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, or click the link in your podcast player to be magically whisked away to a page where you can enter in some key information about yourself and 2 secret code words that we've hidden in the episode. I'll give you the first one of those right now. It is legends. Legends. Legends.
Of the fall.
Like Legends of the Fall.
I was also thinking of Legends of the Fall. Apparently, the most powerful related introverbal to Legends is of the Fall. If you are the same age as us, I wonder. There's my research article. Like Legends. What does it remind you of?
Oh, yeah. If you're not familiar with that, please go watch just the part where Brad Pitt tips his hat.
It's a nice part.
Back when Brad Pitt
That's all
was
you
not a good
actually
actor.
need to see.
All right, legends. Now, back to paperwork. Legends of the paperwork. Tell me another legend of paperwork, Jackie.
All right. Another legend of paperwork is data sheets and data collection. So I'm going to be talking about Halber and colleagues in 2024. And they start off by making a NODA, in that they say that what we require of behavior therapists sometimes is really unrealistic in the face of their experience when working with autistic learners. And
Yeah, I agree.
right. And we don't really like two weeks of training is great, but that's still like not enough to be like, now you're proficient in everything you need to do. And so they said, okay, like here's some great examples. They could just probably like spew them off very quickly, like when to move stimuli, what the prompting should be, how do you take data correctly, how do you correctly make an error correction procedure, and all that's going to change across all your different learners. So you have to correctly know when to do what, when, where, right? And so because of this, there's likely going to be errors, and then there's going to be decrease in treatment fidelity. And so what we really need is more research on how to fix this. And they quoted an article that I really want to read, that they said that they looked at articles within a year published in Behavior Analysis and Practice, and they said that over 47% of them were at risk for treatment errors. And I wonder how they figured that out. But I just need to read the article.
Yeah.
Really. But I thought that was fascinating.
That's interesting.
So research really suggests that there are only certain areas where people make mistakes. But then they say this, but then they cite multiple other research articles that give different errors. So I think errors are ubiquitous, right? They're like, you can make mistakes in the instruction. You can make mistakes with the prompts. You can make mistakes when you're using tangible reinforcers. You can use mistakes when you're thinking about consequences and when you give consequences versus when you don't. Another research found errors about getting attention and ignoring disruptive behaviors during learning contexts. There's errors of omission, right? Things that we forgot to do. There's errors of commission, something that we've added that
There are
doesn't
a lot
belong.
of ways.
There's so many errors.
Yeah.
And all this can affect skill acquisition, right? And research suggests that you need at least 85% correctness, fidelity, in order to ensure that the skill can actually be taught, right? And so one way that the researchers have thought about this is looking previously at LeBlanc and colleagues in 2020 that looked at an enhanced data sheet, made it a little easier to understand. And they found that they had better data collection when using the enhanced data sheet. Battini and all in 2021 looked at whether the enhanced data sheet would have better outcomes with EIBI programs. Surprise. Battini.
Can I ask, what was enhanced? Did it have pictures?
No, it didn't have pictures, but it had more prompts on the data collection sheet and things that were written in. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And
I don't think I've read that article.
It's a good article.
Okay.
Yeah. So they want to do the same thing here, but instead of using it with audiovisual discrimination, which previous studies have done, they're going to use it for tacting. Right? And so they had 20 employees. at a local agency, and they all received a $20 gift card for finishing, which is pretty awesome. And the interesting thing here is that they included behavior technicians, registered behavior technicians, BCBAs, and the supervisors. So a BCBA-D. They ranged in years from 3 months to 14 years. So
Wait.
14 years of
working there?
working in behavior analytic agencies.
Those 3-year-olds were not doing their data collection very well.
Not in ages.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so it was done over Zoom and included both standard data sheets that the agency used and pre-recorded videos on how to run the session. So the standard data sheet was just a trial-by-trial data sheet, and it was nearly identical to LeBlanc's standard data sheet, except that it had 12 trials instead of 9, and they didn't use physical prompting because it was on Zoom, right? But they did use other prompting. And they, in this article, give a really nice, they show what both data sheets look like. And I actually really love the enhanced data sheet just by looking at it versus the standard data sheet.
It definitely has a very like before and after feel to it of like, oh, what a duh. Don't date this loser data sheet. And then, ooh, look at this studly data sheet over here.
And one thing I didn't say is they posited that maybe using an enhanced data sheet breaks down the feeling that it's very complex in nature. And so people do it better just because they're less scared of it.
I think it's tough with those data. Like I look at that data sheet and I'm someone who historically like loved to create data sheets that were almost like, look, these will cue you on the steps in your task analysis of working with the client. Right. And I find that the more complicated they get, the more they're just hard to read without additional training, which is important to have too. But I also never want to send my staff the message, I don't think you can do this. And without these cues, you're going to do a bad job. Because certainly, I mean, many of us having done this job for a long time, you could give me like the most boring, like I got like 4 giant categories of things to note. And I could probably run like a great discrete trial session, for example. But that's not going to be true for every single employee. And you don't want to wait till someone's just done the job for 20 years and be like, well, I can give you whatever data sheet. Now you'll do it correctly.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
But what they found in this article, Rob, was that there was no difference between experience. So the spoiler, so like everyone did better on the enhanced data collection sheet. Even on the standard, people made errors that were higher, had more experience. So they said that there was no clinical significance between over experience or under experience.
I'm always surprised by that. It just seems like if you've been doing this long, I mean, but it's also possible you've been doing it so long with this old data sheet that people haven't given you enough feedback on that you've just been doing the job slightly wrong, or doing the task, I should say, slightly wrong for a long time.
Right.
Or that you're not contacting it enough anymore because you've moved up.
Or you've not attended and you've just been making...
You're like, that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the experimental design was a group design. Woo, woo, woo. And they had 10 people in the standard condition and 10 people in the enhanced condition. They flipped a coin for that. And they also counterbalanced the BCBAs and BCBADs across that so that it wouldn't be like, we're all BCBAs in one. Yeah. So they took data on securing attention, providing reinforcers, right? Tokens, prompts, accurate data collection, all of that sort of thing. And others. That's what he put. And others. They have a nice figure because not only did they look at the data of clinical significance, they also did a mean percentage and made the little error bars that I love. And so they looked at securing attention, provide reinforcement, accurate data collection, following the data sheet, providing each exemplar presented twice, targets presenters in blocks of 3, and targets in randomized order. So that's all the things they were looking at.
Okay.
And they collected IOA and procedural integrity. They were both great. The PI in the standard condition for one trial was 86%. They wanted to pull that out because the enhanced one was 100%. And they just missed a trial, but the person did it at the end. So they didn't actually miss a trial, right? They missed it, but then they did it at the end. So they said 86. So procedure is really quick. They were shown a 14-minute video that corresponded to their specific data sheet on how to do tacting. They had the standard data sheet was 14 minutes, and so was the enhanced data sheet. It was on Zoom. They were told they were going to watch the video and then practice with a Confederate adult. They were asked to locate items within their environment that could be shown on the screen and a reinforcer such as like a penny or a nickel.
Love it.
And they could put them out. And the interesting thing about the items is it had to be an item that had things inside of it, like a shoe, had a shoelace, had a heel, had a toe, like a chair had a leg, right?
This is some pandemic ingenuity, I think, that's
Right?
going on here, right?
Yeah. And so in the video, they described how to run the sessions, and they provided very specific instructions on, how we wanted to run the session with both correct responses, prompted responses, incorrect responses, all of it. It seemed very well done.
Nice.
And then after the video ended, they said, do the best you can. We can't answer any questions. And they got them ready to begin. And so they looked at the data using group means through the visual analysis that I talked about. And then they also used my favorite statistical significant test. Do you remember what that is?
I looked it up in the notes already, so because otherwise
Dennis,
I
you
would
remember?
not have known.
T-test?
No. No.
Chi-square?
What?
No.
It's embarrassing.
The
God,
MANOVA?
even
the
I knew.
ANOVA?
No. These are all reg. My favorite ones,
So basic.
Man
Just
Whitney
basic
U.
stats.
Oh, the Man Whitney.
I love that one. I just love the name. I wish my name was Man Whitney.
Wow. Jackie, did I ever tell you about the time I found all my old statistics notes from college?
Probably.
And I
I'm
looked
just
at all the
kidding.
tests, and I've got like A, and I'm looking at the test, and I'm like, I don't have a damn
Same.
idea what any of this is. I don't think
know.
I've ever done that in a class where I was
Me
like, no
too.
clue. I can't remember this class
too.
at all.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to tell you about the visual analysis first, because I think that is more compelling, to be honest. With the visual analysis, you saw increased procedural fidelity for the enhanced data collection sheet way high in all of the scores over the standard scores. I think the lowest fidelity score was like 80 involving the data sheet, but everything went up to at least 100 with the little arrow bars. And the highest one for the standard data sheet was probably like 86 or so. So it's like not bad. Like people are kind of doing it, and that's one of the limitations is they said they're kind of doing it.
Yeah.
But you did see that the enhanced data sheet did show a good, robust, positive effect, I think. And they did find some clinical significance and noted for randomizing the order of the targets and actually accuracy of data collection. They said previous studies didn't look to see if the data collection were correct.
That's important.
And they said that it was really bad in the standard data sheet, only like 30%, which is like not great.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. But there was no clinical significance in any of the other things. Standard mean actually was only 30%. And it seemed like randomizing the targets seemed to be the biggest problem. So,
People do have a hard time with that, I think.
they do.
Yeah.
They said that they love this data sheet. They said that
We love what we've created.
I love it too. They said that if you're using this, it may reduce the need for some consequence-based strategies and providing feedback and, negative feedback, because the data sheet's helping people run their data better, right? But some of the limitations is that there's potential that there was history with TAC training, likely, right? Since somebody
For
worked
sure.
in the field for 14 years and was a BCBAD. Hopefully they did TAC training.
Probably.
They did not notice a difference between the more or less experienced practitioners, which is surprising, right? They could help. They said that maybe the enhanced data sheet could help with training of new staff, right? And making them feel more confident. So maybe we could do it there. But one of the biggest limitations that I know they didn't mean, this is like one of those limitations that you put in, but you don't mean it, is that it takes more time to make
You
an
were
enhanced
forced to
data
put
sheet,
in.
Yeah.
right? So it might take too long of time. You might not have time for that. But I say if you're going to have time to fix everybody's problems, you probably have time to make
Right.
an enhanced data sheet.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems like if you were able to create sort of like the best data sheets, like great, most of that programming is not going to significantly shift. So you either do it now and then cut down, like you said, Jackie, the amount of errors you now need to correct that your staff doing with clients, or you don't, and you just get to deal with problems forever and ever.
Another one that I actually agree with is that if you make each of these enhanced data sheets tailored to the specific client, there might be too much variability in the data sheets that may also make it harder to train. So maybe if you can have some level of consistency across the data sheets would probably be best. But they didn't know. They said more research needs to be
I
done.
know. I always do find when we talk about individualization, like there's a level of individualization that should be in the reinforcement, in the rapport building, in the stimuli used. The data sheet, Really? Like, that's over. I think that's overboard because at the end of the day, you need to run a meaningful clinic where you have staff who can run procedures. And if you're like, I need you to learn 50 different behavior plans, 50 different data sheets, forget it. At some point, you got to count on multiple exemplar training kind of taking you across the finish line or taking your staff across the finish line. And data sheets are one way, especially if you use these enhanced sheets, that you could save some time and increase that ability to use the engage in the procedure more effectively.
Right. So in the end, they said, try to use this. And they really give you a really, really nice data sheet as a model that you can look at. And it has everything. It's just really nice. I would love to use it. Yeah. And that may help improve paperwork related to data collection.
All right.
Nice. The other thing I would want to know is for those newer folks, right? Like, what was their self-confidence like? Which I know is obviously like a subjective measure, right? But if we're talking about the difference between feeling overwhelmed and not knowing how to use a data sheet and then ending up having to get personalized negative feedback about it, right?
Sometimes stinky in the beginning.
Yeah. And you're already like, you're trying to do so much. Like all the things you just mentioned is so much. And then you got to also make sure your data collection is accurate versus getting a data sheet that has it more laid out for you and it's spelled out and you can be successful with it and then not have to get that negative feedback. Like that could end up having a big impact on how you feel about your job.
And how long you stay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And it's a fairly easy fix. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Okay. I love it. I love that they pointed that out too, because they didn't really have to say that about the confidence, but I'm really glad they did.
All right. Well, we got one more article about paperwork. So we talked about good session notes. You want to know what you're working on with your client. Good data sheets. You want to be doing something meaningful when you're working with your client, not making mistakes. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, folks, you got to get paid. And that's where
I just do my job for no money.
Yeah, right. That's where our friend Brown in 2022 comes in because he is going to describe, or is it he or she? I think it's a he, right?
It's a Christopher with a K. So
could be either.
We don't actually know.
Oh my. Well, that's why they are going to help out by explaining how people can get their timesheets in. So, certainly I was kidding at the front about, that being the most important piece. Of course, it is not. However, it is going to be key for a lot of factors. Number one, you certainly want to get paid for the work that you are, contractually doing. However, I think for most of us, if you forgot to do your timesheets, I'm guessing you still would get paid as opposed to the timesheets say you didn't work, so I won't pay you anything. You'd backdate them or, you'd figure out a way for compensation.
Your supervisor would do it for you.
Yes. However, where this is going to come...
But it's a huge pain in the butt.
Yeah.
It is a huge pain.
Really big.
But where it's also going to come into play is insurance coverage. And as many behavior analytics services are covered by insurance, especially when working with autistic individuals, you are going to need a record keeping system of what were your sessions and what were your bill, what are you billing for? Because if you make errors, it can cost Medicaid or any insurance company. I'm more worried about Medicaid than any insurance company. A lot of money. It's also required to be honest. If you're not engaging in, honest billing practices, even if it's just through, omission of the correct timesheets, that is an ethical failure right there. And it costs a lot of money to have somebody whose job it is to go track down every single person and figure out why their timesheets aren't in. So there's got to be a better way, much like in many of these.
There must be.
So there actually have been previous studies on getting your timesheets in. There was a Piazza study. Again, we've been referencing COVID a lot today, looking at more session notes, and they used a teaching interaction procedure, looking at the labels, the rationales, the instructions, the examples, the non-examples. And then they had some role play and feedback real time over Google Docs to get people doing, session notes at least. Brown themselves also did a study looking at using a checklist, providing a model note and feedback for increasing those note completions in an ABA agency. And then with the supervisor would sort of score this checklist to sort of see was someone complete or incomplete, so the technicians could get better feedback, verbal and written, as to whether they were completing the pieces of their session notes and therefore their timesheets, being able to extrapolate from there. So we're not surprised that any procedure in which you use training, role play, and feedback is super effective.
You're not surprised.
We're not surprised. I hope you're not surprised. But what we will say is it takes a lot of time. And if you have to give an immense amount of feedback for every skill, including things related just to billing itself, you're probably not going to have time to give feedback to some of the other key areas. So you need something that's easier, and you need something that requires less oversight. So here Brown comes in with looking at self-instruction procedures, which we've talked about in a couple other episodes where we've done like enhanced pictorial self-instruction programs, and they're surprisingly pretty effective, even though it doesn't sound that different from just giving people a list, which tends to not be that effective all the time.
It wasn't my study.
It wasn't your study. Again, it's not like it can't be effective, but it's usually not considered like gold standard work. So usually what's a self-instruction procedure? It's a written or a video instruction of how to do some sort of a task. It allows itself to be self-paced. You don't really need oversight other than like, here's access, follow these little modules that have been created. And you could do it with as many staff as you want to. It's not like you have a limit of, I can only get 30 people in this class to give them feedback with, say, like BST. You just, hey, here's 1,000 people. Here you go. Here's the link to the self-instruction procedure. These have been used a lot in ABA. Certainly it's been used to teach staff differential reinforcement procedures in the past, using PowerPoint slides and voiceovers. So it's pretty easy to make, and it's with technology most of us have. It's not 100% effective, so certainly some previous research, another Luna study, it was effective for 33% of staff to use a self-instruction procedure to learn differential reinforcement. But it was good for at least 67% of the staff doing that packet to learn at least one of the differential reinforcement schedules. So it wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. We've also seen studies, I can't remember which self-instruction packet we talked about now, but I know we've talked about it in the past. But some other examples Brown gives are preference assessments and FA conditions. So one of the questions is, how can we make self-instruction packets better? Well, certainly pictures are going to be one of them. Brown refers to an El Nasser study where there was a pictorially enhanced self-instruction packet to improve fidelity of a procedure. And in this, you just have a picture of each of the steps in the procedure as well as written instructions. And at least in that study, without any further feedback, 6 participants reached near mastery just by looking at this pictorially enhanced self-instruction packet. And then even folks who use kind of a standard self-instruction packet and they did pretty good at learning the skill did even better when they also got access to the pictorially enhanced one. So one of the things that Brown is curious about here too is it's great that we have all these like extra methods we can use that probably scale, so pictorially enhanced self-instruction packet. But a lot of times in human services, we forget to do the thing that we as behavior analysts always tell you to do, which is some sort of a functional analysis of the behavior of note.
Good idea.
So one of the things that they wanted to add was, why not use something like the Performance Diagnostic Checklist Human Services, or PDC-HS, to look at performance problems first, rather than just sort of blindly like, here, everyone's got to use this packet, right? Are there problems here? So here are the big questions. Can we use the PDC-HS to find a performance problem? And then can we use a pictorially enhanced self-instruction manual to improve that situation? So there is no longer a problem. I know, wouldn't this be a really bad, and we couldn't, it failed, and don't bother reading the rest of the study.
First time behavioral skills training failed.
No, this isn't behavior skills training. That's the thing. It's a packet.
Sorry.
It's like a packet. So,
but every PDCHS article is like, yes, it works. So this would be kind of like BST as well.
That part would be very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So would this be helpful for improving this clinical documentation question? Get your timesheets in, right? So the study overall, it's in a Journal of Organizational Behavior Management, so it's got to be sort of very functional because that's their job, right? And it's part of an ongoing performance management review at an ABA facility, working with younger autistic children, 3 to 9 years old, and other clients with developmental disabilities from Northeast Ohio. So again, will it generalize to places that are outside of Ohio? We don't know.
What about Southwest Ohio?
Who can say? I don't know enough about Ohio geography to know how different those areas would be. So the study used they used behavior technicians who happen to be female in the side.
Fair enough.
I just read my notes in order there a little bit.
They're like, we only can use females.
Yes, so it's behavior technicians is the key part there, who had like anywhere from about half a year to a year and a half experience working at this facility. And they chose individuals who had pretty low or pretty variable levels of filling out their weekly timesheets, which again went into whether they got paid and their insurance invoices that were sent to companies for billing purposes. And they used a pesky packet, which sounds like the most British type of packet, but all it stands for is a pictorially enhanced self-instruction packet. Which
don't really
not a
need
Joe Pesci packet?
not a pesky. That would be a New York packet. A pesky.
Oh, I see.
A pesky packet sounds like it's from the UK.
I don't think they needed to make an acronym for that.
No.
Well, I mean, you want to get if you want to fill out your timesheets and say, you're a behavior analyst, did you create a new acronym today? If you can't check that box, you're not going to get paid.
I'm never
we all
getting
know this.
paid.
Every day you must have a new
An acronym a day.
And basically all this pesky packet was a step-by-step list of written instructions for filling out your weekly timesheet. But each step had a little picture that went along with it of a good example of what that should look like. And I just want to shout out, again, my day job. We have an IT department that every time they roll out some new system you have to use, they use a pictorially enhanced self-instruction sheet. And I was preparing for this episode when they rolled out something new and they sent the packet, and I made sure to send them a very nice email telling them, thank you so much. These are very helpful and they make it very easy to do the new task you are teaching us.
Well, that's nice
how
of you.
to do.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so nice. I didn't even need a pesky packet to know I should write someone a thank you email. I just do that on my own. So,
if I had to choose between a pictorially enhanced checklist and a video tutorial, I would pick the checklist every
day.
single time.
100%.
I never want to watch a video ever.
No, never.
You know what?
Unless I have to do something like crochet.
It's something dynamic. I think it's something that can change.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to have. Or if there's a lot of variability of what it could look like. So plumbing videos on YouTube can be helpful.
Right. But I would pick if it's something for my job, I would pick a pictorially enhanced checklist every single day. Every single time.
I agree. So that's social validity of 3 on the pesky packets here.
So high.
So the sheet itself used very little jargon, even though maybe they didn't tell them it had an acronym. They just, were using a little jargon, but they felt bad. They had to put jargon somewhere, so they didn't put it in the pesky packet. The steps are in order from top to bottom, filling out the timesheet. So the steps went in the same order you would fill out the timesheet, which that's good, makes sense. I'm glad they didn't jump all over the place. And they'd have a nice screenshot of each step next to each written step. So it was very easy to sort of read along with it if you so wanted to. This did remind me of a little pro tip. It's a little unrelated to this, but if you are reading this and you say, I kind of want to do something like that or make a pesky packet, I learned this from the article and I wanted to share it with you. If you have a Mac or some sort of an Apple computer, Command-Shift-3 will take a screenshot of your whole screen. Then you can highlight the part you want and crop it and cut and paste it. But I did not know this and I learned it, and it's very exciting. If you do Command-Shift-4, it's the screenshot selection tool. So then you just lasso the part of the screen you want without doing all those extra steps. So it is a lot faster.
I should have taught you that.
I did not know that.
Sorry.
You sound like a real nerd right now.
I did use it the other day for a birthday party. We had some friends over and we played a role-playing game. And I did use Jackie sat nearby and then left at some point.
I want to say, I didn't tell you that I liked the story a lot.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I like listening. I just didn't want to be a part of it.
Well, it was a really great experience.
I just wanted nothing to do with it.
I'm sure it's a great experience, even for Jackie, who's not a big fan of games, because I used Command-Shift-4 to cut out some little pictures and I added them to my notes. So I was able to show people the characters.
It was very well prepared.
It's very unrelated to paperwork, but it did it improved my RPG prep paperwork. Command-Shift-4. So just passing that along to everybody. All right, so you've got
as a PC user, I have a snipping tool that I keep on my little bar at the bottom, and I'm able to just grab screenshots of whatever I want that way as well.
Oh, that's good, but it's a separate. I don't know if new Windows has.
It came with the computer.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
I haven't used a PC since they added some of those in.
Oh my god!
I mean, not out of like madness at PCs. I just happen to have this computer, and I don't need a different computer right now. Anyway,
if you're trying to be cool,
I'm not.
It works.
It's working.
So you've got your weekly timesheets, and they've got all sorts of different pieces of information, like, what's the name of the person filling it out? What week is it? How many hours did you work directly with the client? What about indirect hours? And then some sort of like service line that describes what was the service you provided on a certain date? What time did it start? What time did it end? What data was collected? How long was your session? What's the billing code that we're going to be putting in for this? And then where did the service take place? Those are pretty much what was in there. I'm sure your timesheets look very similar if you're working in an insurance-funded company. The dependent variable here was what percent of items did people fill out correctly on this form? They use percentage because you never know how many clients a technician is going to be working with. So just looking at numbers would have been sort of a false bit of information or just too variable for reasons unrelated to the study. So there you go. And they'd have a structured sheet that they would score their timesheet. So they'd compare them to this master therapy schedule that the billing department had. So pretty much what the billing department always had to do anyway to double check, did people fill out their timesheet correctly?
Didn't save them any time.
So they used it for good instead of for needing to just follow up on people. They used a variation of a concurrent multiple baseline design across participants because they really couldn't stagger them because people had to actually do their job related to doing timesheets. And the supervisors to look over this also weren't available all the time. So, you filled it out when you could.
Yeah.
Someone just started working there and they're like, here you go, here's the pesky packet. So again, a little bit of a weakness in the experimental design, but what are you going to do? This is real life, folks.
That's right.
They also did some social validity. So beyond the 3 that we had, so you can take this number and add 3 to it, and that's who likes pesky packets. So before the intervention even began, they used the PDC-HS to kind of look at, well, what is up with timesheets? Why are people completing these so poorly? And one of the results they saw was people were not effectively trained in filling out the timesheets. So they said, well, we need to train a bunch of people. We don't have time for BST. Let's put together this pesky packet because it's really, really fast. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, we'll go to other training formats.
Throw it in the trash.
This also is nice because it didn't require them to deliver any feedback. They did have to correct the timesheets, but you don't get those timesheets back. They just get corrected and you never see them. So there's no direct feedback to the person filling them out.
Yeah.
In baseline, everyone got verbal instructions and modeling about this is how you fill out your weekly timesheet during their normal onboarding process. And then the author used a scoring form to sort of say, okay, who's getting it right, who's getting it wrong. The intervention, the author said, hey, everybody, here is the purpose of the packet. It's to do a better job on filling out your timesheets or something along those lines. There are errors, I think was the wording that they used. And they provided this to help them. Brown was not their supervisor. Supervisor is not apparently one of the authors on this paper. And they said, use this packet.
Supervisor's so mad.
Yeah, right.
I know, they didn't get in the credits there. And the supervisor just said, use this pesky packet when you're completing your notes, and you can use it as a reference, and you have it. No one was forced to use it, so one of the limitations, did anyone actually use it, or they just got better at timesheets? It's hard to know. And what were our results?
Yeah, that's kind of legit.
Yeah.
What were our
They
results
probably didn't
here?
get better at timesheets, though, because nobody cares
Probably
that
not.
much.
No,
Yeah.
nobody does. So we had 5 technicians in this study. The first one, they sort of just go through each one. So the first person was sort of, stable, but pretty low percentage of correctly filling out their timesheets, like about 35% correct. And when the pesky packet was in place, boom, shot up to an immediate change to near perfect levels, and it maintained over weeks.
Wow.
So very effective for them. Tech 2, sometimes they did a good job with their timesheet, but sometimes not, which is weird because you think you'd fill out your timesheet either right or wrong.
The same time.
But
yeah.
sometimes they filled it out right. Sometimes they filled it out, more right. Sometimes they filled it out more wrong. So they
Maybe
were all
they
over the
filled it
place.
out right if they didn't have any special things going on.
Oh, that could be.
Right?
Yeah. Who knows the factors? But it was like 42 to 88% accurate in baseline. Again, pesky packet, boom, up to 100% correct
Nice.
for that tech.
Good for them.
The third technician was actually getting a little bit better. They were about 44% and kind of moving closer to the 67% range at the beginning. So a slight increasing trend, but pesky packet, boom, right up to 100%. So let's not wait around for you to eventually figure it out. Let's get you to 100% today. Tech 4, again, pretty similar, a slightly increasing trend in their baseline. And they actually were still pretty bad at their timesheets after getting their pesky packet.
Yeah, but they didn't look at it. They're the ones that didn't look.
Yeah,
They're like,
right?
you're going to fix
Yep.
it for me.
Number 5 had just been hired, so they got a very brief interventions. They only had 2 notes filled in the baseline at about 57% correct, immediately jumped up to about 89 to 100% correct with the pesky packet. But they didn't have as much data because they'd just been hired. So, was a pesky packet effective for increasing the paperwork completion? It was for 4 out of 5 technicians. And the nice thing is, it only took 30 minutes to put this packet together because I guess
nice.
Command Shift 4 is a super time saver. And it resulted in a change from an average performance of like, anywhere in like the 50% to 60% up to about 98.8% accuracy. It ranged
amazing.
like 89 to 100%. So really good. And there was a high percentage of maintenance for about 8 weeks at least till they did study for at least 2 of the technicians. The others also did a good job. They just can't say anything for maintenance because it was such a short amount of time they had it. So, wow, 30 minutes of time and your paperwork for timesheets is all but mastered.
HR people are smiling in their sleep.
So nice. You didn't need to call it training.
Yawning,
you didn't need to do behavior skills training. You didn't do 1,000 feedback sessions. You just, here's your packet. Bam. Again, limitations. Could there be more experimental control? Yeah, sure. There always could be. Isn't that true? Is it possible that the floor effect might have made some of these results look better than they did because sometimes some of the components were always done correctly? For example, their names were probably right every single time. I don't know. Maybe. Who cares?
I don't mind.
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Also, it might be a matter of, with PESI packets, you have to make a lot of them because things might change. What if that timesheet changes 1 month? Now you got to make a whole new PESI packet.
My favorite PESI packet my favorite flavor is pineapple.
Okay, you like a pineapple PESI?
Yeah.
Again, and you need to know how to make these forms. But to be honest, if you're making a new procedure, someone has to learn it anyway, and you probably haven't changed things so drastically that you couldn't just use Command-Shift-4 and add like 1 or 2 new
I'm going to get
pictures.
you a shirt. Too bad it's your birthday in another year.
Command-Shift-4.
Too bad.
I think if you had a twin, then you would both wear
Oh, yeah.
Command-Shift-4.
That would be good.
I like that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that they bring up that maybe the PESI packet wasn't effective for everybody was because all the PDC HS told them was training is definitely an issue for this area. Mm-hmm. However, there could have been a lot of other performance consequences that were impacting individuals. So if the 4 out of 5, it might have just been basic training. That 5th person, it might have been another skill as well that they were in need of additional training. So that could be why the PESI packet is not like a foolproof solution, at least in this one skill. And again, like we mentioned, did anyone actually use these packets? Maybe participant 4 lost it and they were too embarrassed to tell anyone and they just kept filling out their timesheets incorrectly, right? Did people use them a ton? Would self-monitoring have been a good addition to the use of these packets?
There's always a challenge in this type of research because you're not watching someone fill out their timesheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't actually know if they're filling it out correctly. Like, were they sick? Were they there? Right. All those things.
Well, they did though, right? Because HR had to weigh in.
I know, but you don't really
the payroll
know.
folks did.
Yeah, that's
the supervisor did.
Right.
You don't really know. Just saying.
So, again, these pictorial enhanced self-instruction packets seem pretty great. I feel like, are we going to be like 5 years from now being like BST? I don't use that anymore. It's all PESI packets for everybody. I think there's going to be limitations to what skills they do and do not work with. However, we're at a fun point in research where I don't think we've found the limits of these self-instruction packets yet. So a lot of areas to see, like, where can they keep getting us improving our training abilities? So very exciting. It's not just going to be timesheets, folks. And that does all the paperwork. That's great. Everyone's going to get their paperwork in.
That's so much paperwork.
We don't know the power of podcasts for getting your paperwork done, but let's assume it's amazing. You'll have to email us and let us know. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's move into Dissemination Station real quickly. And it really is, I think, when we're looking at people doing paperwork, it's going to be, hey, if you are not using checklists or pictorially enhanced checklists, you really should use that as sort of your first tier, very quick intervention for staff, because you can't train everything with BST, and you probably want to do that for the skills that matter most to the clients as opposed to matter most for the company and the organizational paperwork. All needs to be done, but maybe start there with those pictorially enhanced type of checklists.
And then I think it'd be fun to do future research looking at motivation to complete paperwork.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's high across the board.
Will a pizza party fix it?
How about Employee of the Month?
Yeah.
We know it won't, but that would be fun to look at.
Yeah.
I don't think we've done an episode where we talked about our APA citation training articles.
We have not. No. Maybe we'll do that soon.
Yeah, we totally could, because it's...
Save it for May.
It's gonna be May.
Because we asked ourselves this exact question, right? Where we prepared like a much more complex instruction training and then a checklist. And for some participants, just the checklist was effective. So it's like your comparison of BST to the PESI packet is why I thought of it.
Yeah.
I guess I'll save that full convo for maybe another time.
So the easiest thing to do with paperwork is nothing, but it's probably not that easy because you spend hours fixing everyone's paperwork. The next best thing, which I would say is probably the place to start, your enhanced packets or your enhanced
Or your checklist.
checklist. What about enhanced checklist? I don't think there's a difference between an enhanced checklist and an enhanced self-instruction packet that
Usually
much.
an enhanced checklist adds pictures.
Yes, that would really be the difference. And an enhanced self-instruction packet is a longer written checklist with pictures. So you could probably use them interchangeably to some extent. And then after that, think about what cues are your data sheets or your sheets telling everyone to get them to engage appropriately with the sheet. And then if that's still not working, okay, you probably need behavior skills training and looking at, reinforcement contexts.
This also reminds me of a universal design approach, right?
Yes.
Because providing these types of enhanced examples and instructions benefits everyone. You don't have to wait until someone is failing at a task and have to single them out and make them feel like, oh, you're the only one who can't do this task and now I need to give you feedback, etc. Instead, you can provide everyone with enhanced instructions from the beginning so that anyone who maybe did need a little more assistance is getting it from the get-go. And anyone who was maybe stressed out by this or lacking self-confidence in it or, is scared to ask, they don't have to do it. They can just hopefully be successful from the beginning. So it's a great way to sort of head off any future concerns or not have to single anybody out and everyone's hopefully getting what they need. So I like it from that perspective too.
Can I say hot take? Hot take.
Sure.
If your favorite training method is waiting for people to fail before you train them, you're the failure, bro. What? Ooh.
Control F you.
Oh no.
It's my second favorite function after Command Shift 4. All right, Diana. Let's wrap it up with a pairings.
Okie dokie. Pairings is the section of the show where I tell you about past episodes that you might want to check out if you liked this one. Now, we haven't really talked about this type of subject matter before, I would say.
No.
Which is kind of cool, and I'm glad that we talked about it today. We have in the past talked about procedural integrity challenges for running sessions and data collection, and we've talked about BST and some other considerations for your employees. So given all of that, these are my recommendations. You could go back and check out episode 133, where we talked about procedural integrity with Dr. Paula Braga Kenyon. Episode 301, where we did a tutorial on treatment fidelity. Episode 126, we talked about behavioral economics in varying employee settings with Dr. Derek Reed. You can check out episode 215, which is a supervision episode where we talked about the PDCHS. You could also check out a couple episodes we had on BST. Episode 65, which was also supervision, titled BST for All. And episode 132, where we did a component analysis of BST. I also like to recommend a snack to enjoy with this episode. So the snack today is a Sanka and a cheese Danish.
Yum.
Because those are the things that I think of as being available in your
snack anyone ever ate.
HR office where you need to go and make sure that you filed your paperwork.
Okay. Thank you, Diana.
Please enjoy.
And thank you all so much for listening to ABA Inside Track. If you like our show, please remember to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. You can also find us online at abainsidetrack.com to find links to all of our previous episodes, as well as to the articles that we discussed in this episode and a place to purchase CEs. If you want even more ABA Inside Track content, why not join us on patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where you can subscribe at the $3, $5, $10, or $20 levels. Each tier will give you something different. Everybody will get access to the episodes ahead of time, but as you move up the tiers, you're able to get access to voting for our quarterly book club episodes, our listener choice episodes, as well as discounts on CEs and even free CEs for listening to those listener choice and book club episodes. As of this recording, we should pretty soon, if not already, have released our book club on Divergent Minds, which is a very interesting discussion on the topic of neurodiversity from a perspective I don't know if we've talked about as much on the show. So pretty.
Women.
Women.
Well, no, we talked. Yes, okay. It's an interesting perspective. We had a great discussion, and we would love for you to hear that. So again, patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. I want to make sure to give everyone their final secret code word, and it is Olive, OLIVE.
From Olive Garden.
From Olive Garden.
I really want to go there, even though I can never eat there again. I would literally die because I can't have a lot of salt.
It's a salty
all
place.
salty, but man, I've been dreaming about salad and breadsticks. I had a dream about that. I went to Olive Garden.
Ooh.
Remember in like 8th grade when you would like mouth words to other people and you would say
Olive you.
olive juice.
Oh, yeah.
Olive juice. But it would look like I love you.
Oh, no.
I did that.
I never did that.
Just because you weren't as cool as me and Diana.
No,
Yeah,
I was not.
apparently not.
That's very true. We all know this. Check out my PDCHS. It says right there.
Not as cool.
But
Not
you use
as
a
cool.
Mac. How can you not be?
I mean, well, it's one of those.
Trying.
It's one of those when they break it down by question. Yes, some of them come out as cool, but all right. Some final thank yous. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music, Kyle Sturrier for our interstitial music, and Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his amazing editing work. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode. Not about paperwork, though, so how fun can it really be? But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.